Here we are on the Ides of September. Fun and informational. The Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University, Willview Works, Danny Pommells, Amy Fadool, Noah Levick, our producer, Ben Berry. Behind the scenes, making things happen. So glad you could join us. How are you guys doing?
Hi.
It's almost fall. We talked about October almost being here, the early rollout of
Can
Halloween.
I just stop you for real second? Why did you call it the Ides of September?
It's the middle of September. Ides. That's from my Latin background.
First of all, the Ides of March is when it is. It's March 15th. So
Yeah, so it's close enough.
Oh, okay. I'll celebrate it the end of September on September 34th, since we're at the 17th.
Happy anniversary. Let's go there. How about that? Now, how about that?
Yeah. Thank you. No one knows I'm right. No one knows I'm right. I took 7 years of Latin. Don't you like?
Yeah, whoa! Wait a minute. I took 3 years. You took 7 years of Latin?
I took 5 years from 8th grade through high school, and then I took 2 more. I guess it was technically a semester and a half, but I got up to the 300 level. Yeah, listen, the classics. I'm all about it. Also, I didn't have to speak the language, which is number one for me. There was no oral exams in Latin, so that was.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, but after the pod, I want to know your SAT scores. I got to know. I just have to know because they had to be ridiculous.
My verbal was quite good.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Noah, did you take Latin?
Yeah. I did not continue in college. I don't even think it was an option, but I think I started in 7th grade and went all the way through high school. So
nice.
Yeah, I would echo that it's helpful, and it was appealing to me as well. I didn't have to try to do some sort of perfect Spanish or French accent, which seems very hard to execute.
That's not what we're doing. The translating was not that much fun. I'll give it that. That was not that much fun, but other than that, it was a great language. Daniel,
learned a lot.
We got 3 Latin scholars on this very podcast. Who knew?
Learned a lot. But well, I know Noah was way smarter than me, and I knew you were way smarter than me. So that makes sense now that you guys took so much Latin. So
that's not true.
Only if some of it stuck more of it just stuck.
Yeah, right.
Because I don't remember quite as much as you probably
doesn't really
should.
help us now at all. We have no need for it.
I did really enjoy when Julius and Bella and Kyla got the Odyssey though, and we had to translate it. But reading it, not having to translate it is so enjoyable.
Much more enjoyable.
I love mythology. I like mythology a lot. But go ahead.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It was a lot to translate. We also translate the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Right? Yeah. Please. Nightmares. But we're here on the Sixers Talk podcast, and a lot going on behind the scenes as things are pushing toward the season beginning, training camps and whatnot. Podcasts going on. We will start with a great piece by Sam Quinn of CBS Sports. Very in-depth, detailed. Obviously, these are his personal views and pointed opinions about the ranking of the NBA coaches from top to bottom, different tiers. And of all the tiers, I believe there were 9 tiers in the article. Nick Nurse is coming in at number 2 on his list, right below Eric Spoelstra, which he beautifully outlined Spoelstra as the kryptonite to a lot of these NBA coaches because of his and for lack of a better term, out of the box thinking toward how coaching and some of the dilemmas and obstacles that he faces, which he really gave Nick Nurse a lot of credit for defensively of being an innovative mind about. But too high, guys? Too low? Yeah, I guess too low was really a weird question to ask, but what do you think? I was really surprised, and it's just really reinforces the notion that he's very highly thought of in NBA circles, and he's a coach that the Sixers definitely upgraded with above Doc Rivers and should be thankful to have running the ship here.
Yeah, no argument for me with Eric Spoelstra, number 1. I think the classic way to try to analyze what good coaching is just getting a lot out of your talent and tailoring your schemes to maximize your roster. And Eric Spoelstra, I think year after year, is exemplary with all that stuff. But yeah, Nick Nurse for me, just when I think of the coaches in the NBA, he's clearly a top 5 or top 10 guy. I think I'm hesitant to be super specific and rank every single one the way this article does, just because I think there's so much we don't know. in terms of how much responsibility assistant coaches have and exactly what coaches are doing, day to day behind the scenes. But yeah, look, I think Nick Nurse, as he showed his first year with the Sixers, is fantastic at implementing his style of play. Like, his teams are going to play exceptionally hard, even when they're shorthanded. They're going to try to win the possession game, force a lot of turnovers, take care of the ball really well, crash for offensive rebounds. And he, as a coach, has made a name for himself because he's truly willing to do anything. And the experimentation is not 100% successful, but I think there are plenty of examples where he has been really savvy with these unconventional moves that he makes that allow his team to win playoff series and do a little bit better than one might think on paper. So, yeah, number 2 for me, I think is quite high, but I didn't read that and think, whoa, that's outrageous. I mean, for me, there's probably 8 or 10 guys where I think that's an especially impressive high-level coach. And for me, Nick Nurse would broadly be in that category. I think, many of the names outlined I agree with, like Ty Lue, Mark Dagnall, Tom Thibodeau. I think Joe Mazzulla, the reigning champ, should be in the conversation as well with those top 10, top 5 guys. And yeah, I think Nick Nurse has shown that he's not a one-year wonder. It wasn't just that he lucked into a championship his first year. I think he's legit a top-tier sort of coach, and we'll look to prove that even further. He's definitely hungry for another deep playoff run and another title in Philly.
Yeah, number 2 surprised me just in the fact that it was a 2 ranking. You guys can check out the article, but I'll save you the suspense. There's no suspense to who's number 1, and it's Erik Spoelstra. And I think he called him like the undisputed king or something. But he had a lot of different metrics that he measured and used, and he didn't grade everybody in each category. But it was things like creativity, player development, people managing, like how well your players respond to you in the player personnel department, of like talking about some of the, the moves and how are you organizing your lineups and with your rotations. And then it had creativity, and to me, and then track record. And creativity and track record are 2 things. When I read the kind of, metrics he was using in the article, I thought, wow, those are going to be 2 things that are going to go really heavily in Nick Nurse's favor. And then obviously in Erik Spoelstra's. When it's no surprise that he's at the top. And I think one of the categories was literally just legends, living legends, and it was Greg Popovich. He had his own graph. It was just I'm just going to give this guy his flowers and move on. But yeah, I mean, I think Nick Nurse is so highly respected around the league. And I think he is in that same air of guys that or people look at and be like, here's a coach I'd like to play for, like an Erik Spoelstra, like a Steve Kerr. And then getting up there with guys like Ty Lue, I think that people really respond to, and maybe to a lesser degree, Joe Mazzulla, who's becoming that guy as well. But I feel like he is just so well-liked, well-respected. He has certainly earned every little bit of it. And the path that he's taken to get to this point, winning a championship up in Toronto. And I know he had Kawhi, but he also he got a lot out of these role players, so to speak. And I think that that's something when people look at here and what he can do is he has role players, but he also has 3 bona fide stars and their expectations. And that was one of the things. Another thing they measured is the results versus expectations. I think that is something that will, make or break if they re-rank these in a couple of years, Nick Nurse, because the expectations when you have the roster that he has are going to be very high, as they should be. Now there's some caveats in there as far as, injuries and whatever else, but I mean, I liked that. Danny shared that with us on our text chain, and I had not read that article, and I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was fascinating. His explanation was very in-depth, and the more I read it, I was like, wow. First blush, I was like, number 2, I'll give you 5, but number 2? And then I read through the different things that he was using kind of to measure, and I was like, oh, nope, I can see why he would have him up a little bit higher. I think Nick Nurse is very, very well respected, well liked, and at some points revered. I think it goes to a lot of that kind of emphasis when you look at the matchups and they'll say oh, it's Nick Nurse versus so-and-so. When we haven't had a coach here regarded in that in a very long time, there was not any chance. So you would look at, no offense to Doc Rivers, and be like, oh, Doc Rivers really concerns you. But Nick Nurse, because he has kind of that mad scientist kind of feel, and you never really know what he's going to do, he does give you pause as an opponent. And I think that's something, which is one of the reasons probably that he got up so much higher in those rankings.
I'm glad you used the word fascinated, because the article I thought was so well written. And
it was very fascinating.
And on top of it, it was very unapologetic. Like, he's given his pointed opinions about each of these coaches and situations. And, Noah makes a great point about the ancillary things surrounding what goes into coaching success. Because if you remember, when Nick was with Toronto, they were lauded so much for their player development and, finding diamonds in the rough, Fred VanVleet and so many others. But excuse me, how much of that was Nurse? How much of that was the organization? How much of that was Masai Ujiri or the front office or what have you? And then, Nurse coming here to Philadelphia, and, the article kind of points out, and like Amy said, I don't want to spoil it for you, but it just gives him a lot of credit for how he was able to game plan against Steph Curry and neutralize him, about his varied background and how all of those things kind of come into play to give him a lot of situational awareness with, game plan and defense, and also giving him like credit is like the best defensive mind in the game, opposite the article outlines Rick Carlisle being the best offensive game plan in mind, Sam Quinn considers. So it was fascinating to me to read those perspectives. And I said in the chat, it was such a detailed article, which obviously, corroborated a lot of Quinn's notes and opinions that have been developed over the years. And he didn't give credit to any other writers or anyone else for contributing to the story or anything. So these are all his thoughts and opinions. And with all that, he puts himself in the situation where he has Nick Nurse here at number 2, and the expectations that go with being number 2, and what the Sixers have done, and the fact that he feels like Joel Embiid had a better season under Nurse than he did under Doc Rivers, which was his MVP year. So it's an interesting article, and definitely made me feel like if I was a coach reading that, I would either be like, yo, maybe I need to rethink some of the perspectives and thoughts I have, or I need to call this dude up and tell him he doesn't know sugar honey iced tea and he needs to, shove it up his, what. But I thought it was interesting that Nurse landed there. And like you said, the expectations and how that might play out over these next few seasons. And we've seen a few coaches kind of get swept away in what the Sixers are trying to do, the expectations of the fans, having this talent and how to get the best out of it and things like that. So if that's Nick Nurse's forte of, kind of squeezing the juice out of the orange, then this is an opportunity for him to, cement that legend even more. And I really think, Noah, just watching him day to day and seeing the press conferences and hearing his opinions and thoughts on a regular basis, it stems from a serious place of competitiveness, man. This dude is a supreme competitor and is willing to do anything, long hours, extra analysis, working individually with players on drills, whatever it takes in order to get that little bit of an edge.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, he's willing to try everything, and he wants to be equipped in the moment to sort of have an understanding of what, plans A through Z are, if adjustments are needed. So yeah, look, he's not a flawless coach. I think every coach has their weaknesses. And yeah, look, I think the first year in Philly, it's hard to be too harsh about much of his work. The Sixers were hit really, really hard by injuries. They didn't go anything near all in at the trade deadline, and they lost an extremely tight series to a strong team in the Knicks, who was much, much better than the Sixers in the crucial area of rebounding. So look, I think Nick Nurse implemented his style extremely effectively here. You saw almost from that opening jump, it was a radically different team that was like fully bought in to the way Nurse wanted to play. I think that's a really positive sign. I mean, for me moving forward, I look back at the Raptors years and I see his key players were always right up there in minutes per game. And I'm curious how that's going to manifest with someone like Tyrese Maxey, who you sure would like to stay healthy and fresh and the best version of himself. And then even with Joel Embiid, obviously paramount to be smart about his health and have him at his best in the postseason. And you look at how last year ended, Embiid played every single minute of the second half in Game 6 against the Knicks and did not perform well. So, maybe Nurse will be a little bit more flexible as far as when he buys a few minutes of rest here and there for his stars. And yeah, look, on the player development front, he's got another MIP under his belt in Tyrese Maxey. He has a super well-respected guy running the player development program here in Rico Hines. And Nurse cares a lot about development, and he understands that's one of these ways where you can gain a little bit of an edge and enable your team to make those desired leaps and win titles. So, yeah, I think very, very strong work in his first year, but a lot still that he'll want to accomplish. And certainly the track record suggests that he's a very good coach to be running this team, at this stage where they really are pushing hard for a championship right now.
It all starts in the Bahamas in a few weeks, and we will see how this team will take shape. Let's pay some bills here as we're almost 20 minutes into the Sixers Talk podcast. Of course, celebrity cook Steve Martirano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Be sure to enjoy Martirano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations for Martirano's Prime on Open Table. Get to know our title sponsor, Wilmington University, online or in person at its open house on Wednesday, October 16th. Details at wilmu.edu/open house. wilmu.edu/open house is the website. Back here on the Sixers Talk podcast, I have not been in the chat until that very moment. Do you see what's in there, Amy?
I do.
Oh, do we want to move on from that, or
we do? I mean,
Ben trying to one up us. 1440 SAT. Look at
it's
that.
Just not. He might. Who took it?
Was that on a 1600? Who took it?
Did Derrick Rose take it? Did Derrick Rose's friend take it?
My boy took Hebrew in college as well, so you can read.
See, there he goes. He said it was out of 2400.
I was wondering.
See us old heads up here, and I'm not talking
I
about
thought it was out of 1600.
You and I were out of 1600.
It was out of 2400. So I don't know why you're volunteering that information.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell that to anybody.
No, I wouldn't either.
I think you get 1,000 just for signing your name on that scale. So.
Look at Noah. He's like this.
Noah's like, Noah, was it out of 1600 or higher for you when you took it?
I was 2400, but
that is crazy to me.
Yeah, we can discuss further, but Ben very, very candid with
Noah got 2300. It's okay, everyone. Noah got that Lower Merion education. He's up in here taking Latin.
I'm not surprised for sure. Noah, a very astute young man, and it's funny. We're talking about Nick Nurse. I think he will qualify as an answer to the next question I'm going to present. And let's look at this roster as a whole. Let's include Nurse in there as well. Where do you feel like the Sixers player, personnel, whatever person, who has the most to prove this upcoming season? Who is carrying the most of that target on their back, proverbial target on their back? I have a person in mind. Interesting to throw Nick Nurse in the equation. Let's throw Daryl Morey or Elton Brand in there as well, just to broaden it out a little bit. Amy, I see you nodding your head. What are you thinking?
I mean, the most to prove, I think, is and always will be Joel Embiid. And I don't mean that in a negative way, huh? Okay. But he's got the most to prove. He is one of the best when he's going. He's one of the best players in the entire world.
Hasn't he proven enough? What else is there?
I mean, I need to prove availability and durability. That's what I need him to prove.
That is a tough one to saddle him with. But
it is. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. I mean, it's at some point you have to perform in the postseason consistently. That's just the way it has to be. Mm-hmm. He is an elite player. You talked about it earlier in that article. They talked about how much Joel Embiid was better even after his MVP season. Look at last year. Look at how he started. Look how he was playing. He was once again leading the league in scoring. He was averaging over 35 points a game. He was he even said it like when he got hurt, he just scored 70 and he feel like he hadn't even scratched the surface. This guy is a supreme talent. And we always joke on our pre and post game set that, Kristaps Porzingis was called the unicorn. Joel Embiid truly is a unicorn. You've never seen anything like him. Jim Lynam always says, Jim Lynam has seen more basketball than we all could have forgotten or even thought about. He saw Wilt play like at the playground, for Pete's sake. And when a guy like that says he's never seen anything like Joel Embiid, I'm going to go ahead and believe him. And I know what I see in Joel Embiid, and I know what the potential is, and I know coaches do, and I know GMs do, and I know opponents do. He is a force. He is a tour de force. He is so formidable as an opponent. It is
getting me hype, Amy. You getting me
right?
Hype. Yeah.
Like I mean, I just remember watching the Olympics, and I watched the gold medal game with my family, who are not from here, and they're like, look, they don't watch the NBA like I know my mom does, but no one else in that room does. And they were just like, look at this guy. And he wasn't even playing particularly well. I'm like, but he's such a force that when he has the ball or even when he's on the court, you can't not account for him, look at him, take him into some kind of like process for your defense or offense, depending on, what you're playing. But to me, that's what makes it so frustrating, because I just want to see him live up to that in the postseason. I want him to get to where he can go, not where he should go, where he can go, because there is no doubt in my mind he is one of the best players in the world. And when he's going, he might be the best, because he is so unique in the way that he plays the game, and he's such a force. And I know that people call him like a free throw mug, whatever, then don't foul him. He makes his free throws. He plays defense. He can go and bang around in the low post. He can hit the threes. Like he's such.
So the pressure is on him to take it up to another level, or just be healthy in the postseason.
You got to get there. You got to give me 2 rounds in the playoffs of playing, not missing games, not being hampered by an injury. I think at that point, and then if it doesn't happen, then it didn't happen, and it's not going to happen. But we have yet to see. I think the bubble was the only time we ever saw a healthy Joel Embiid, and there are other people that weren't healthy. And so obviously we know Ben Simmons went down. So it's disappointing. And Joel Embiid was a fraction of what he has become, with the bubble being 4 years ago at this point. Seeing what he has become, his MVP year, the year before he won the MVP, and then certainly last year, it makes you just so excited, but also so frustrated. So to me, I know the injuries aren't always his fault. It's not like he tries to get injured out there, but for the person that has the most to prove, I mean, you could have anybody. You could say Paul George. You could say, certainly the front office for the roster they built and the coaching staff. But to me, it begins and ends with Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I mean, he's who I had too. I think like you can make a Paul George case. He's a 9-time All-Star who's 0-3 in conference finals, and if he were to make the NBA Finals and win it with a team that's starving for a championship in a new city that he decided to go to, I think that would have a huge impact on how his career is viewed. But yeah, for me, it's obviously Joel Embiid. He's the best player on this basketball team by a large margin, even with two other All-Stars. And yeah, it's tough because I think you try to examine his previous postseason performances, and it's like impossibly muddied by the injuries. And he's always going to be stoic about, oh, I'm fine, I'm able to play. Like, I don't want to complain. But, last year did put up 30 points a game in that Knicks series, but everyone saw his face was not, what it normally was with the Bell's palsy, and the knee clearly was well below 100% as well. So, yeah, a lot of it is outside of his control, and he just needs to hope and pray for better luck. But I do think, the more playoff disappointments / failures, the more he's open to criticisms of the play that's within his control, as far as, inefficient shooting games and leaning on the mid-range and not getting foul calls in the playoffs. I think some of these criticisms are harsh. Some of them are painting with a little bit too broad a brush, but I know it'd be very satisfying for Joel Embiid to put some of that to rest. And I do think he would prove a lot if he were to finally break through this year and be the guy leading the Sixers over that hump. So, I could make a Paul George case if I wanted to, but the honest answer for me is I very much agree that Joel Embiid is the Sixer with the most to prove.
Wow, that's a good one. I didn't expect you guys to agree. And you paint great pictures of how he bears so much of the brunt of what needs to happen with this team. I probably give him a little bit of a break. And it's crazy to think about how much we've watched basketball over the years and seen these players from other generations, Karl Malone, Michael Jordan, Scottie, and I'm picking Hall of Famers, but people who are able to somehow navigate the injuries. But yes, this is a dude who's 7'2" and carrying around 300 plus pounds of weight and also playing both ends of the floor in a way that, like you said, in the unicorn style that we haven't seen. And I probably, Noah made a great argument for me about Paul George, and that's probably where I would start, because he's the guy that has the pressure of being the glue to make it all work. You come into a situation with a fan base you think you understand, but you really do not quite understand. And you come into a situation where they built this shiny new practice facility and place for you to really develop, but it's kind of disconnected from what you will expect and see when you step out on the Wells Fargo Center court. And so it's just a little bit of a disconnect between, I feel like, the shininess and the newness of the practice facility. You kind of are introduced there and you go through the players walk and it's so beautiful and things like that. But there's long-standing, deep-rooted, blue-collar angst and frustration that also is a part of what you see over there. So I think when I look at Paul George, you mentioned his finals record and the type of player that he was in Indiana and what he is now. And, we could touch on the injury that he went through with Team USA. And I feel like for him, even though, he's so easygoing on the podcast and seems so relaxed and comfortable, deep down, there has to be a extremely burning desire of him to want to get over the hump. And this is his greatest opportunity to do it. No disrespect to Kawhi Leonard and everything that they had going with the Clippers or Russell Westbrook and how much I enjoyed seeing him in that OKC Thunder jersey and all that with the free agency with Nas and all that they went through. This is with Joel, Tyrese, the supporting cast around him. This is his best chance to get it done. I look at Paul George as the guy that has the most to prove because he has the responsibility of not only being the new guy to kind of make it all work. He has a little bit of a elder statesman connection with the Tyrese Maxey trying to help him come along, as well as meshing with Joel Embiid and making that work. And I'm sure there will be a lot of point forward responsibilities for him. The ball will be in his hands a lot more maybe than people think. And I just feel like he's the guy that has to bear the weight of trying to be the heavy in this situation of this myriad plethora of people and minds and opinions and thoughts and expectations. So I will go with number 8.
I mean, the thing is that there's not a lot of wrong answers, and your point is so on target when you think about Paul George. He specifically is brought in here for the capper, right? The guy that's going to get you over that top edge, in this case, past the second round.
And they've tried others in that role and have not worked.
And they've worked to a certain degree. I mean, let's say James Harden did work to a certain degree. But also he knows his role is to help spell Joel Embiid. He has been, very forthcoming with, listen, I'm here to get Joel Embiid as healthy as possible and to alleviate some of the scoring load because there's nights where he needs to be out or whatever. Like, he knows what he's here for. And so that does put a lot of inherent pressure on him and his role. He's not here to play out the string. And this is a guy at the end of his career. He's here to help the Sixers get to a championship. And to help their MVP get to the postseason as healthy as possible. They've made no bones about that. That is number 1 for them. Everybody knows the most success is going to be a healthy Joel Embiid. So when you talk to Paul George and he says that, it's like, yeah, listen, I know what I'm here for. I'm here to help this team. I'm here to help Joel Embiid get to the postseason healthy, because with the healthy big man, that you can't stop us. And that's just a simple fact. That's not even like him trying to brag or whatever. He knows his role. And I think that that's really important. But it all centers around Joel Embiid, which I think is pretty funny. So like, yes, the pressure's on Paul George, but it's also on Joel Embiid. Like, all right, we got your healthy guy. Like now it's your turn. Like now you have to do it.
Yeah, I think back to Paul George's story about that free agency wee hours meeting and Dr. J recalling, the Moses Malone move and how that put the Sixers over the hump. And Dr. J saying to Paul George, like, I think you can do a similar sort of thing with this era's team. Yeah, that's not a small amount of pressure when, even if it's not a direct comp, you are
one of the greatest of all time is staring you right in your face, telling you that
this is what we expect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, the analogy is not perfect, but I do think it's accurate that the Sixers view him as the all-star who's going to take them to the next level. And, definitely significant here that Paul George made this decision to leave his home and go across the country. And it's a bold move, and he's not naive to pressure by any means. He's been doing this a long time. He's heard a lot of boos in various arenas. I don't think any of that is going to cause him to get in his own head terribly or fall into dramatic slumps. But yeah, I think in all likelihood it's true that the Sixers need him to be very good at his role in order to achieve their goals. I also think, though, like a lot of his role should be quite comfortable for him. I think there will be many nights when Embiid and or Maxey are cooking and drawing double teams, and Paul George just needs to play good defense, to hustle, to grab defensive rebounds, to shoot open threes. But absolutely, I think there will be nights when they need something special from him, and still an open question whether he'll be able to deliver on those occasions.
It will be fun to watch. We are tight on time. We all have little varied responsibilities we need to get to. Noah, do want to give the floor to you as the website continues to be ever changing. What's going on there?
Yeah, just continuing with our series on some of the key pre-camp questions for the Sixers. Latest piece was on the defensive rebounding, diving a little more into whether the Sixers have done enough there. And some of the important factors that the Sixers will need to check off in order to become a better defensive rebounding team. So, yeah, that's the main item on the agenda as we tick under 2 weeks until training camp.
NBC Sports Philadelphia.com is the place. Jared McCain threw out the first pitch for the Philadelphia Phillies. Strike. Looper right in there. But
good form. Yeah, he looks like he's thrown a baseball before, which I think he always that's ideal. And I think maybe a slightly high strike zone. That's a strike, but definitely a good pitch by I think any account.
Yeah.
Be sure to check out Noah Levick's work on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com and get your latest podcast information wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate you listening to Sixers Talk, brought to you by Wilmington University. For Noah, Amy, and Ben, I'm Danny. We'll see you next time.